What is going on, you guys? It's your boy Average Bob, and in today's video, we're going to do our final lead up to the NFL draft coming up this Thursday night, where the Giants are picking all the way back up at the top, third overall after the worst 3-14 season imaginable, where they did beat the Colts and probably put them out of commission for getting that first overall pick. But let's dive into it because I want to talk about a couple different things about this upcoming draft and give my thoughts and POV and what I want to see the Giants do. Regardless of what happens, I think I'm honestly going to be pretty happy with how it shakes out just because I don't think the Giants can possibly mess this up. I mean, we could fast forward to this about 9 p.m. Thursday night and you'll be laughing in my face saying, "You idiot, they already messed it up." But with that said, I think there are a couple can't miss guys at the top of the board here if you think about it from a football playing perspective. So let's just dive into what seems to be the consensus of what will probably transpire here. So, with the Titans picking number one, it seems like it's an absolute lock that they are taking quarterback Cam Ward out of Miami, which then leaves us with a couple options available who could go number two. And then you have the Cleveland Browns selecting two overall, and it seems they're always a wild card. They'll probably mess up whatever they do anyway. So it seems like the options after Cam Ward consensus options from what you've seen in mock drafts and just reviewing and what we think here would be you're looking at Abdul Carter out of Penn State, edge rusher, who I did a video on recently, who I absolutely love. Again, my brother turned me on to him pretty early on last year during Penn State season, as they did have a lot of success last season. And a lot of it was due to, they had some good guys on offense, good running backs, two guys running backs, but their defense was probably the best it's been in quite some time. And a lot of it was due to having Abdul Carter as an edge rusher. He finished last season with, I believe, 12 sacks. And he would be who I want the Giants to take at third overall. The Giants need to get back to the form of where we were successful when we won Super Bowls, was having guys like Strahan, Tuck, OC, Matthias Kiwanuka, just sending dogs at the quarterback over and over and over again and getting to the passer and, impacting the game through that route. And we haven't been able to do that in quite some time. And the Giants have tried recently to make amends. And by addressing this, they took Kayvon Thibodeau a couple years ago. They traded for Brian Burns last offseason, made him a top 5 highest paid edge rusher in the league. So would it make sense to take another guy and throw him into an edge rusher position when you already have two guys that you've already invested in? One heavy financial investment in Brian Burns, the other one heavy draft pick capital, as I believe Thibodeau was in that draft 5 and Evan Neal was 7. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, and I'm not afraid to have a logjam at any position, especially like that, where all these guys seem to be decently very athletic. They're not like the big body type guys. I mean, edge rushers now are, between 265 and 285, right? So they're not, none of those options that I mentioned are all too big, right? So that means they're athletic. They could be moved around. They could play in coverage and do more quarterback spy stuff, as the NFL is really predominantly a rushing quarterback league at this point. So I think taking Abdul Carter, you can put him in many different positions. You can move Thibodeau and see what he has. Like, I'm not married to Thibodeau at this point. It seems like they'll probably opt into his 5th year option, which is like, I think between like around $18 or $19 million a year, which, you put that, I don't know, piece of cheese in front of the hamster wheel or whatever and see if he's going to run after it and try and absolutely ball out in the last season of his rookie contract and get a large term deal that would impact his life forever. I don't know if he'll do that. He's been oddly inconsistent. We've watched it season in and season out at this point, that he will show up for games, have a 3-sack game, then you won't see him for 4 or 5 weeks. So I'm absolutely fine with taking a guy at 3 in Abdul Carter who can play for us for 10 years and be successful in the NFL and plug him in from day one. And I think Abdul Carter gets us back to our roots of rushing the passer and solidifying our defense, because there's been a lot of great edge rushers and pass rushers from the Giants historically, and it's been lacking for quite some time. When you've seen the Giants be unsuccessful and having really shitty seasons, it's also has to do with some of that as well, as the defense has sucked. So you can never underestimate throwing a guy in at 3 overall, starting him from day one, and having him play for hopefully 10 years. So I'm cool with Abdul Carter. I want him. I'll be happy with that. Let's move up to the next guy here, which would be Travis Hunter, who he keeps talking about wanting to play. Travis Hunter, wide receiver and cornerback, who won the Heisman last season from Colorado, teammates of quarterback Shedeur Sanders, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But Travis Hunter played both ways in college. He seems to be very, cocky in that regard, that he'll play, both ways in the NFL. I don't necessarily see that happening. It's pretty much impossible to do, especially in a modern day NFL where, to be the cream of the crop and elite, even at one position, is full time, giving everything you have to be successful and to learn and to master your craft in that regard. So maybe they throw him in. If you take Travis Hunter, you're taking him probably to play cornerback, because cornerback is probably the hardest position in football to play. The Giants are lacking in quarterback. In cornerback, they took Deonte Banks from Maryland a couple seasons ago. Decent first season, sucked, was terrible last year. I don't know if you could depend on him moving into another season like that. They also signed Paulson Adebo from the Saints, who, again, I guess was injury prone last year, but the Giants brought him in, pretty hefty contract, to see if he could start across from Deonte Banks. Still, not the two best options. And we've seen also throughout the years, the last few years as Giants fans, the amount of injuries that pile up. So if you can find someone who you could start at cornerback from day one, who's a super stud athlete, that's also a can't miss guy in Travis Hunter. And if you need him to play some plays on offense here and there and get him involved in some way, shape, or form, I think that's fine. But I think primarily you'd have to have him playing cornerback. And that's where the Giants would need him to play. It would be fun to have Travis Hunter lining up opposite from Malik Neighbors. That would obviously change the offense as well. I don't know. Do you guys think Travis Hunter could play both ways in the NFL? Can anyone really truly play both ways in the NFL? College is one thing, which, again, hat tip to him for doing it. It's probably why he edged out Gene T to win the Heisman last year, is because he was playing both sides of the ball and put up insane stats for both sides. And All-American corner, All-American wide receiver. So, again, regardless of what he plays, the guy is an absolute baller who can play offense or defense at the highest level, I think. So, regardless if he isn't taken by the Browns 2 overall, I'm totally fine taking him as well. So, I think if you're taking the best player available between Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, I'm really fine with either of them at this point, because they're guys that could be around a long time and they're the best players available. When you start drafting for need a little bit, which we could talk about now, it's future franchise quarterback, right? Does it make sense to take a guy at 3 overall if you don't think he's going to be your guy overall? And I do want to make a point towards the end of this about building a good team and then finding, when you do find that quarterback, what it looks like, right? But Shedeur Sanders, there's been a lot of hype, obviously, through the whole last college football season. And then recently I saw they actually just retired his and Travis Hunter's jerseys, or their numbers, at the University of Colorado, which is crazy for their 13-11, career record there. But it is what it is. It's more for the media and the hype that they brought, and the hype train that Dion and Coach Prime bring anywhere that they go. So at 3 overall, if Shedeur Sanders is available, I'm fine with the Giants taking him. There was a while where I was kind of I don't want to deal with Coach Prime. I think it's would also become a modern AAU father type style where the dad's going to be kind of like LaMelo Ball. I don't really know that much about the NBA. I don't really watch it too much, but from what I've seen and heard, kind of like a LaMelo Ball situation where the father is there talking to the media. This coach doesn't know what he's doing, trying to undermine the coach and the teammates. And I don't know. I don't know if that would happen. It seems, obviously, Dion's very opinionated. He's very clickbaity. The media absolutely loves him, so they'd probably just mic him up 24/7 if they could, to be like, what do you think about the Giants this year? And the second he says, I don't really like what they're doing on offense, Rumors will be flying. Does Dion want to coach his son? Would they be the first father-son duo coach? It would just be a lot of drama. And I initially was against all of that, but I think at this point, I think he's a fine quarterback. I think he played with a very shitty offensive line in college. And if he came to the Giants, he'd have a pretty shitty offensive line too. So nothing would change there. And he had a like I think over 70% completion percentage. I do like because I do think there was a misconception with him about being, obviously Dion was a flashy, very fast player. I don't think Shedeur he's models himself as a little bit more of a pocket passer, which is I think definitely a misconception that I had about him until I started going into the tape and watching some more of the games that he doesn't want to run with the ball. He wants to stand there and deliver dimes. And he did do that because, with a shitty offensive line, he still was able to stand in the pocket, take hits, and had an above 70% completion percentage in college, which is pretty damn hard to do. And I know they were trying to throw on some tough games on the schedule too. So I'm cool with him. I think it's something for the future. And, for a locker room perspective, he brought in Russell Wilson. He brought in Jameis Winston. Those are two guys that have been in the NFL for a very long time that are really good to learn from. And it's the opposite of what Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers had, where Rodgers went into that situation and Brett Favre treated him like shit. Brett Favre admittedly treated him like shit. And they kind of joke about it. And he's like, when he said, my job's not to make him the starter. I think it would be the exact opposite if you were to bring in a rookie quarterback and have them in that room with Jameis and Shedeur. It would almost be like a passing of the torch, but like, hey, I'm going to have my season or as many games as they'll give me now if I'm Russell or Jameis, and then we'll eventually pass the torch to someone like Shedeur in a year. But I think there is in the NFL, you have to learn you shouldn't be thrown in day one, especially if your offensive line sucks, especially if your team sucks, because then you got someone like Bryce Young, their confidence has been crushed, and they get their ass kicked and they could also get hurt. The Jets do this time in and time out with Sam Darnold, with Zach Wilson recently, right? There's no leadership in that room that kind of shows them the proper path that they should take to be a successful NFL quarterback. And I think that's very undervalued to have guys like Jameson Russell in a quarterback room showing someone, even if you go down at the end of the first round or second round, Jalen Milroe's there. Another guy who could be great to come in for the future and learn from those guys. And because I think the attitude that Russell and Jameis have is very inclusive and they're warm and welcoming. They're not dicks like Brett Favre was, right? So they also want to be a part of someone else's journey and then be positive towards that because maybe they didn't have that, or maybe that's just the nature that they have as individuals. So I know that was a little bit of a long-winded rant there, but I think that having those two guys and pairing a young guy in there, like Jalen Milroe, like Jackson Dart, like Shedeur Sanders, is pretty sweet. And I think it could pay long-term dividends regardless. The team next year is not going to win 10 games, right? They're 3-14, and you're adding in mid 30-year-old quarterbacks and trying to figure out things through the draft as well. So it is a step in the right direction because going back to what I said earlier about Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, bringing on the best players that you can now and building for the future. And to me, it looks like an example of something like the 49ers have done recently, or even if you go back to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Super Bowl winning season, they're okay. They win games. They have Chris Godwin. They have Mike Evans. They have good running backs. They have a really good defense. And then you slide in someone like Tom Brady, win a Super Bowl that year because they had a good team built already. They just needed the right fit and mold at quarterback. Look at the 49ers the last couple of years. They slide in Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, onto a good team with the 49ers probably had more superstars. I guess that's a good, embrace debate. Superstars than the Buccaneers did, right? Because the 49ers, you had Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, Christian McCaffrey. Then you could put in the last final pick, 253rd of the draft, right? And he can be successful because the rest of the team is so good. And you have a good defense. So that is kind of where I kind of sit towards the end of this, where I think as long as you keep building a good team, bring in baller players through the draft that you could try and keep around for a long time by getting them to take team-friendly deals. And then eventually, when you do have the opportunity to add a quarterback that fits one, into your system, and two, has the right mentorship and coaching to be successful, then that really pairs it all together, and that's what makes a team successful. Let me know what you guys think about the upcoming draft. I know I was kind of jumping around a little bit there towards the end, but I've had a lot of thoughts. I haven't done a true video in this fashion of sitting down like this because there's just been a lot of moving pieces on my side. We had the second baby, we moved. So more of the content that I put out recently has been really around YouTube Shorts, which is very short form video. Can't really say as much as I want to. And then the live streams sometimes go off the rails, but they're pretty cool. So maybe I'll do some of that. I unfortunately don't think I'll be able to do it for this Thursday night, as I have some other stuff going on, and I don't even think I'm going to be able to be in front of my phone, unfortunately, or like whatever. So we'll see. Maybe I'll go live Friday or Saturday if that's something you guys want to see. Again, let me know what you guys think, what you want to see from the Giants with the third overall pick. Do you want to see them take Abdul Carter so we could really shore up the defense, even with Travis Hunter, absolute baller, cornerback, probably play him at wide receiver a little bit too? Or do you want to see them, maybe reach on Shedeur Sanders, who won't necessarily play from day one? I don't think he's good enough right now to probably beat out Russell Wilson or even Jameis to that extent, but something to build for the future. Or do you want to see like Jackson Dart or Milrow at the end of round one, early round two? Anyway, if you guys made it this far, thank you guys for watching. Really appreciate you and all the feedback and everything recently. So we're going to be pumping out some good content as we move forward after this draft, more offseason stuff. And yeah, so thank you guys for watching. Have a great day.